What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be talking about none other than the lovely V.E. Schwab. Can I have a round of applause, please, for the brilliance that is V.E. Schwab? I am here to talk about her because the only book I had ever read by her before was The Invisible Life of Addie Larue. Now, here's the thing about The Invisible Life of Addie Larue. I 110% understand why that book was so hyped. I understand why it was such a groundbreaking success because it was very unique and it was very well written, and it really characterized this idea of being able to get away with anything and being able to live whatever form of life that you want, but also understanding the loneliness of not being seen. And the character's journey, the people that she meets in the book, I think was just so fascinating. However, it was very slow. So for this reason, I didn't pick up any other V.E. Schwab until now. But before we jump into that, let me introduce myself. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Jaya. I put out videos every Wednesday and Sunday on bookish related content. Every once in a while, there's a random spattering of other things that may show up. Travel vlogs, haul videos. Well, actually, most of the hauls are still books. Videos about what's in my bag, even though it still includes books. So I would say the majority is still book related, but we do have some randomness that shows up in this channel. But if you're a book lover, and specifically a fiction book lover, and you're an avid fiction lover like myself, and you might even consider it a slight addiction, you're definitely in the right place. Because here in this community, there's no judgment. We're all about the books, and we don't plan on giving up this habit anytime soon. For those of you that are returning, thank you so much for being here. It means the world to me to be able to build this bookish community with you guys. I just think it's so much fun to be able to create an environment where it's a safe space for us to talk all things books. So without further ado, let's jump back into the beauty that is V.E. Schwab. So let's talk a little bit about these lovely books. The first series that I ended up reading was The Monsters of Verity. This is a young adult duology series that is basically following the characters of August and the character of Kate Harker and August Flynn. And it's basically following these two characters who are on opposing sides of a turf war that is basically taking place with their fathers. You have Callum Harker, and then you also have Henry Flynn. I will get into more details on these shortly. I would say overall, I did rate this series a solid 4 stars. Then we have the series I just finished today, and that would be the duology Vicious and Vengeful. And can I just say, chef's kiss, I'm obsessed. I loved these books, loved them. Solid 5-star reads for me for both. I just think the character development, the storyline, everything about it, I loved this series. So let's get into them. This series begins with, ow, that really hurt, this book, This Savage Song. This Savage Song is basically exploring the idea of what Verity is. So let's talk about that first, actually, before we talk about the explorations, if you will, that is seen in this book. So quick synopsis, this book is basically following the story, like I mentioned, of August Flynn and Kate Harker in a world called Verity. Verity is a city that has basically been overrun by monsters. These monsters are created by sinful acts done by humans, primarily violent acts in particular. So anytime a murder occurs, a violence occurs, mass crazy violent outbreaks occur, then basically these monsters are born. And there's 3 different classes of monsters that you're introduced to in this book. The first one is going to be the Corsi. The Corsi almost function as a hive mind. They basically only feed on the actual physical body of the humans. They will pretty much tear you apart and eat you up. They are created by essentially the violent acts against an individual, like a manslaughter charge maybe without meaning to do so. There's actually this whole little poem that they have in here that talks about what the creation of these monsters is completed with. Let me see if I can actually find that for you guys, because that's the best way to describe how these monsters function. But Corsai are the most basic of the different monsters. Then you have the second type of monster, which is called the Malachi. Malachi are basically monsters that are created from premeditated murder or murder with intent. These creatures primarily feed on blood and very, very similar to vampires. However, the difference is Corsai have to live in the dark. Malachi can actually come out into the daylight as well. Last but not least, you have the Sunai. Sunai are the ones that look the most human. These are monsters that have been created because of mass violence. So think about like a school shooting type of thing in today's world, right? Like that would be what would create a Sunai. Sunai are monsters with a sense of conscience, so they basically reap the soul of all sinners. They don't go after humans who have not sinned, but they very openly will go after humans that have sinned and have stained their blood red. So how do they function? Corsai, tooth and claw, shadow and bone will eat you raw. So again, they're primarily shadow creatures. They're very, very like the monster under my bed type of vibes, and they eat the bone and the sinew on the body. Then we have Malachi, sharp and sly, smile and bite and drink you dry. So again, that vampiric creation. Sunai, eyes like coal, sing you a song and steal your soul. Monsters, big and small, they're gonna come and eat you all. So this is the rhyme that is known by everyone within Verity. And these monsters have basically been created by human actions and are now roaming amongst the city. Well, in order to protect the citizens, there were two different opposing viewpoints on how this should be done. One by the Henry Flynn family and one by the Callum Harker family. Callum Harker basically rules the north side and is the father of Kate Harker. Then you have Henry Flynn, who happens to be the adoptive father of all of the Sunai that have been created. Both of these characters have very opposing views on how they should approach the concern for monsters. So Henry Flynn is actually a trained doctor by nature. He's very, very kind, and he's all about saving as many people as he can, and he basically controls the South Side. He also has a group of individuals who work for him in the FTF, which is basically the primary police force within the South Side, and their role is to basically go out and catch all the monsters. Henry Flynn also happens to have 3 Sunai under his care, Ilsa, Leo, and August. And in this first book, the 3 act almost like they are siblings, if you will. Ilsa and August are both holding on to quite a bit of humanity. In fact, throughout the entirety of the first book, August just wants to be human. He wants nothing more than to be able to relate to them, and he doesn't want to quote unquote go dark. The thing about a Sunai is while the Sunai is in its most humanesque form, and while it has not quote unquote gone dark, they basically get tattoos across their skin that are special to them. So Ilsa will get stars across her skin, August gets tally marks, so on and so forth. And these basically indicate how long they've been close to human and not gone dark. This is basically the moments when they are the most sane. They still have their abilities to perform as a Sunai, so they can still reap a soul and do all of these things, but they're in their least monstrous form. Then there's the component where they can go absolutely dark, basically meaning that they give in to this idea of darkness and suppressing all of those human emotions until they become full-blown monster. When that happens, catastrophic things can happen around them because obviously these monsters were created from very, very dark events that have happened in human history. So August's only goal in life is to basically be as close to human as possible. He's been studying human nature very closely, and he wants to mimic those features and continue to be as close to human as possible. He's terrified of going dark. Meanwhile, you have Kate and Callum. Callum basically rules with an iron fist of fear. He provides medallions to all of the citizens within the north side of Verity, and if you have a medallion, you are protected from monsters. If you do not have the money to pay for a medallion, then you're at the risk of the monsters roaming Verity City. The only person who can hold them at bay is Callum Harker. Callum Harker also may or may not have created Sloane from an act of murder that he performed. Sloane is basically the leader of the Malachi and basically is under the service of Callum Harker. The two of them together are basically working in tandem to keep the accord alive that separates the south and the north side at the seam, which basically divides Verity into its two parts. And Callum Harker continues almost like mob boss vibes to control the monsters around him. Now, another sad, tragic thing that has happened in his history is that his daughter and his wife were caught in a major car accident. His wife passed away, but his daughter survives. Kate, though, eventually realizes that she has significant damage from the car accident, and one entire side of her face is scarred, and she's lost hearing in that ear. From the idea that he wants to protect his daughter, Callum Harker sends Kate away, and then Kate ends up being belligerent about this and wants to do nothing else than come home and prove to her father that she can take on the family business. By doing this, she decides that she's going to create utter and complete chaos in all the different boarding schools that she's sent to, such as setting fire to the church. Once she gets kicked out from her last option, her father has no other option but to bring her back to Verity and enroll her in the high school there. And Kate wants nothing more than to be at home and to show her father that she belongs. So Kate gets enrolled in the school. Henry Flynn finds out and he says, "Hey, August, I know I've been keeping you cooped up in the home because I didn't want anyone to know that we had another Sunai outside of Ilsa and Leo. You've kind of been our secret weapon. But at the same time, I know you've been wanting to go out. I know you've also been testing your ability to be human. So go to this school, act as a high school student, and basically spy on Kate Harker." So that's how the story begins. They're basically thrown into this school environment together, and we really get to see the emotional aspect of both of these characters. They grow a connection, they realize what each the other person is, and then everything goes crazy. So in the midst of everything that's going on, basically a hitman is contacted to come and murder Kate, and the hits that are being done by the monsters that are believed to be turning on Callum Harker are basically committing the murders in the format that a Sunai would have done so, thereby creating discord between the north and the south sides and potentially causing the truce that has been held between the two sides to fall apart. After this, you basically have a bunch of crazy events that are happening throughout the book, and that's all I'm really going to share. That's just a brief synopsis of the beginning of the book. Honestly, that was probably like the first 15% of the book in a synopsis without too much detail. Also giving you an idea of where the book takes place. By the end of this book, things have become absolutely crazy. Kate and August have to separate ways, and they're in completely different places at the end of this book. And I just think that this was an absolutely lovely starting point. Honestly, I think V.E. Schwab's writing style is so beautiful. Her way of describing these characters and creating these characters is phenomenal. And I think it's really, really interesting to see a young girl who's been damaged try to portray that she's so strong. And then August, a monster who has the heart of gold, who wants to be human, accepting that he can't change what he is. It's just a very powerful story to read. And the young adult romance is also very sweet in this book. It's not the highlight of the book, but it's definitely there. And it's just very, very sweet to see. So that was The Savage Song. Our Dark Duet basically picks up from where the Savage Song leaves off. So you basically have discord happening at the level of the seam, and you have some characters that have died at this point. You have Kate on the run, and you have August back in the south side, basically accepting the fact that he has to step up and essentially become the Sunai in charge and take over this idea of accepting that he is a monster at the end of the day, and no matter how hard he tries, he can't be human. So at this point, Kate is on the run. She's basically doing her own thing, and she ends up in a completely different town where she actually makes friends. Now, this is a big deal for Kate because we see Kate as a very tough, angry character, but when she's on the run and she's under disguise and she can't be known to be Callum Harker's daughter, she completely rearranges herself and realizes that it's okay to make friends. Then something crazy happens. There's a new monster that's born. Now, this particular monster, also called the Chaos Eater, is basically a monster that just has to look at you, and it basically imparts a silver shard of itself within your brain that then convinces you violent acts are okay. So it causes the breeding of violence and mass murders, but no Sunai are being born. Instead, the Chaos Eater continues to take more and more shape as it continues to seed this violence. Young Kate has the unfortunate moment of passing across this monster, realizes what's happening to her, and then tries to take control of the monster rather than letting it control herself. And she's on her way to find August because she knows he's the only person who's going to understand and potentially help her in hunting this monster. And this also happens incidentally because she decides she's going to track this monster on her own, and the monster also takes her towards the south side. Meanwhile, August has basically turned off any of his human emotions, and he just wants to function as full-blown monster. His family's a little bit worried about him. His cat's a little bit worried about him. His sister's a little bit worried about him. We also get introduced to a new Tsunai in this book. Her name is Sorrow. Their name is Sorrow. And basically, between Sorrow and August, they're essentially leading the FTF. There's a lot of things going on within their own family that they have to deal with as well. We also have a new monster that has been introduced. So in the first book, I had mentioned that our main monster of concern is Sloane. He's the antagonist. Now we have a new one. Her name is Alice. The two of them together are basically wreaking havoc across all of the scene, and they are causing a lot of frustration to August and the rest of the FTF. Basically, throughout the course of this book, Kate and August have to team up in order to overcome this new monster that's been created, as well as face some demons of their past to take down Alice and Sloane. Loved this book. The romance in this book was also so sweet. The fact that the two of them meeting together is when they get to be themselves and pull each other's humanity out was very, very sweet to see. And I do like the fact that both of them, regardless of the war that's surrounding them, still find moments of peace within each other. I do think the ending of this book is a little bit tragic, but I think it was written beautifully, and I think it was the perfect ending. I think that's the other thing I like about V.E. Schwab's writing is she doesn't necessarily guarantee a happy ending, but she also leaves them a little bit enigmatic, so you can kind of take your own ending and interpretation from it, if you will. I wouldn't say it's as open as, say, an Inception, but I would say that it leaves enough of interpretation to the reader where you can kind of play with it a little bit. This series, I would say, is definitely more finite in its ending than maybe The Invisible Life of Addie Larue was, but I did thoroughly enjoy this book. I gave it a solid 4 stars, and I just absolutely loved this young adult series. Now, the other thing that I will say is that these are young adult, and because of that reason, I would recommend reading these first. They're fun, they're fast-paced, they're enjoyable reads, but they're also a little bit more simplistic, and they don't contain as much emotional range, I would say, as some of the other books do. So if you haven't read The Invisible Life of Addie Larue, I would recommend reading these first, then read that book. And then once you're done with those 3 books, I would hop into Vicious and Vengeful. Now, I don't have enough words to explain how awesome these books were, but imagine if you basically took the X-Men and flipped it upside down and made it a little bit evil, and that's basically what these books are. Vicious is basically following the story of Eli and Victor. Victor is Eli's best friend in school. The two of them come from relatively broken backgrounds, but their focus is essentially achieving the impossible and becoming extraordinaries. They have found in this version of human society that there are people who basically survive at the brink of death and come back, or they die and then they come back. Their heart restarts basically. And every time they come back with an extraordinary power. So Victor and Eli decide that they're going to take it upon themselves to study how this occurs. They're scientists at the end of the day. Both of them initially were in pre-med and they wanted nothing more than to become doctors. But as they go through the course of their education, they figure out how to create a medication that allows them to control their own death and then to come back from it. So unlike every other extraordinary that's been created out of circumstance, these guys actually plan it out and then they succeed. So this book is taking place in 2 different timelines. In one of the timelines, you basically get to see Victor and Eli as friends, their history, what's happening at the school, how they become these superheroes and supervillains through the course of the story. The second half of the story is taking place in the present, which is basically talking about how Victor and Eli ended up enemies and how Victor is just recently released from prison. Their powers are super cool. They're very, very fun. It felt very Magneto versus Charles Xavier to me. It was wonderfully written. And then you also have the story of Sydney and Serena that's taking place. Sydney is a young girl who basically loves her older sister, Serena, and both Serena and Sydney undergo a tragic incident that happens that causes their hearts to stop and then they're reborn. Serena now has the ability to control anyone with just her words, and Sydney has the ability to bring back people from the dead. These very unique characters basically end up circulating one another. Eli and his allies are basically out to kill Victor, and Victor and his allies are basically out to stop Eli. So throughout the course of this book, it's just a who's going to get there first with a bunch of magical powers. So again, just felt very Magneto versus Xavier in a very dark kind of gothic-y world, but definitely a great piece of sci-fi. I absolutely love the characters that were built in this book. I love the way that V.E. Schwab gave us little bits and pieces of the storyline that led these two characters to be where they are. I also love the unexpected allies that they create, sometimes under coercion, throughout the course of this book. And I just think the ending was so poetic and so beautiful. So I would definitely recommend reading this book. This was a solid 5-star read for me. I'm absolutely obsessed with this. I just feel like because so many of the plot points that happen in this book, even when they're small, they all tie together in the bigger picture. I don't want to give away too much detail, but definitely read this book. The next book that I read in this series is Vengeful. Now in Vengeful, we have Eli and Victor once again pitted against each other, but now we have a Marcella Riggins who is out in the open. Marcella was a mobster's wife who basically befalls a very unfortunate series of events that occur that lead to her death. When she ends up being reborn, she is out for vengeance. Hell hath no fury, like a woman scorned. I would say she's very adjacent to a Jean Grey character, but Jean Grey, if she was insane, Dark Phoenix all the time, crazy pants, setting everything on fire, that's Marcella. Marcella also ends up getting a few of her own comrades in this book, and she's also basically the primary antagonist in this book. However, in the midst of this, you also have Eli and Victor hunting her for various reasons as well. And then you also have the cops coming after her because, again, she's the primary anti-hero in this book. This book was awesome. This book was just awesome. I think it really made the characters face fun of their core beliefs that were described in the first book. Victor is also damaged in this book, so him going through a journey of trying to fix himself and to understand himself was really fascinating. Eli's interpretation of what's right and wrong and what his role is also very intriguing to read. He battles a lot of internal demons, and I think in the first book we get a lot more of Victor's story and Victor's perspective. In this book we got a lot more of Eli's story and Eli's perspective and Eli's history. So I do think overall this book was just absolutely excellent. There are also some great sidekicks in this book. There's a guy who can literally travel through shadow to multiple different places. Remind me of that blue guy who was in X-Men. There's another woman who's a shapeshifter. She can literally change into whatever shape she wants. We don't even know if she's actually a she, but then that's kind of revealed at the end of the book. And it's also, again, a question mark, so we don't know for sure who she is, but it's very, very well written. Then we have a character that can basically create force fields to protect them against any kind of attack that Marcella has on her team. Again, you have the girl that can bring back dead people, just all kinds of crazy cool characters in this with some really, really interesting powers. And I just feel like it's really interesting. I also didn't mention that Eli is a regenerative. He can basically regenerate his own self. And so in general, just such a fascinating couple of books and just written so beautifully. I would basically say this is V.E. Schwab's dark version of X-Men. So imagine the X-Men novels meeting Jurassic Park, and that's basically what these books are. So good. So incredibly good. 5-star books for me. Strongly recommend. So what I'm saying is, at the end of all of this, I definitely think V.E. Schwab is going to be an author that I continue to read. I don't think I've read any book of hers thus far that has made me think, oh my God, she's a terrible writer, or I don't want to read her. But I can honestly say that Vicious and Vengeful were so good that if I read another book by her that are as hard hitters as these two are, there's a good chance she might make it to the for sure will be read author list in my list of people. That being said, that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. It means the world to me. If you're new here and you like bookish content, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button and that notification bell. Once again, I put out videos every Wednesday and Sunday, and I would love to see you back. For those of you that have been a part of the community, it means the world to me that you're here. It's just so special to be able to share all of these bookish findings with you guys and to go on this fiction addiction pathway together. So I hope to see you guys soon, wherever you are, whether it's morning, evening, or night. I wish you a wonderful, wonderful day. And I hope you and your loved ones are feeling safe, protected, and having joy in all of the different things you choose to do. And on the off chance that you just need to escape, make yourself a cup of tea and escape into a book. I'll catch you on the flip side. See you guys.